Hey folks, the not so evil Viking 13 here with Total War Rome 2. Now this is not a let's play, at least not yet. I'd like to get more familiar with the game and all of the changes first. I do have about 5 hours into the game, including completing the entire prologue, and I have some launch day impressions here for you, and I'll have some gameplay going in the background. First up, let's talk about the visuals, because that's what you're looking at right here. On first launch, the default graphics options were really messed up in Rome 2. I had to go through and configure a lot of different options, which is pretty normal for a PC game, but a lot of the options seem to be not very descriptive or just in fact broken. In fact, the in-game anti-aliasing is almost worthless, and it's really hard to see any kind of difference turning it off or on. Even with full AA on, there were a lot of jaggies, a lot of rough edges on the rendered frames in-game, and I ended up turning off the in-game anti-aliasing and turning on and forcing CSAA and FXAA via the NVIDIA control panel. If you guys are still having issues with jaggies in your game, try turning off the in-game AA and experimenting with some control panel options if you have an NVIDIA card. Jaggies and weird graphics options aside, the visuals are pretty stunning. The close-up detail is something that we haven't seen in a Total War game or really any other RTS game like this. The amount of different faces and uniforms that your troops wear is just amazing, and combined with some really great sound effects, the up-close camera action feels like you're actually in the battle and really feels just downright brutal and violent. It also gives your troops kind of their own personality, and it's great to see all the variations in your troops. There's a bit of color grading this time around. You can kind of see that in this footage here with this kind of orange-brown filter. That is not post-color, that is actually rendered inside the game. It's a bit off-putting at first, but I'm really beginning to like it. It gives the game its own visual flair. Really the only weakness as far as visuals go is kind of the medium to long range camera area. Compared to previous Total Wars, excluding Shogun 2, which I have not actually played, the medium to long camera range has a lot of popping and a lot of low detail and jagged objects that are rendered. It's a bit noticeable until you crank up the depth of field, which helps hide some of that background stuff. I don't want to speak for Creative Assembly, but it looks like they had to sacrifice some of that longer range detail in order to get all of that incredible micro detail up close. And once you get used to the popping, it's really not that bad, and I'd say it's a worthy payoff because, as I already said, those up-close visuals, when you really get in there with your troops, they're incredible. Definitely worth it. Overall, the visuals are a massive step up from previous Total War games, as we kind of all expected, but they also come at a pretty strange rendering cost. Now, I have a GTX 680 overclocked by about 200 megahertz or so, and an overclocked i7 930 running at 4.0 gigahertz. So I have a pretty decent system running this game, and generally my frame rates on mostly ultra and extreme settings, my frame rates stay around 60 FPS, but I'll get random drops from anywhere from 12 to 25 FPS, and they're not always easy to predict, and I haven't figured out a way to iron them out. It seems like no matter what my graphics settings are, these random FPS bombs still happen. Looking at graphs of my video card and my CPU as the game runs shows that my CPU is only getting about 50% usage. My graphics card is occasionally 40% idling. So it seems like there's some optimization issues. Perhaps we'll see some driver updates from NVIDIA in the future, but it's a bit annoying right now to see these just really nasty FPS drops, sometimes without warning. And it's just really strange to see that really wide range of frame rates. Thankfully, this is a strategy game, so you can still play pretty well during the FPS drops, but it does kind of hurt the allure of the graphics. So overall, with the visuals, I'm mostly happy, and I'm hoping that they'll get these issues ironed out with some patches and some driver updates perhaps from NVIDIA and AMD. Moving past the visuals, let's talk about the audio a little bit. And there's not much to say here other than the audio is great. It sounds fantastic. When you zoom in on the new cinematic camera and get right in there with your units, the tramping of the footsteps as your soldiers march, is almost ear-shattering. You can almost feel it in your bones, and it feels very action-oriented. You also hear your commander shouting orders and encouragement to your troops. You hear the death cries and the clash of swords in battle. Everything just has a really impactful sound to it, and I'm really enjoying the sound design. Finally, and arguably the most important part, how about the gameplay? Creative Assembly has made a number of changes from the original Rome as well as some of the previous Total War games, including Empire was one back in 2009. They've tended to streamline the UI and kind of increase the pace of the campaign map by eliminating these outer town areas and kind of getting everything all together on one region screen. And I'm not describing it very well, but if you've played previous games, you'll kind of understand where I'm going with this. As you play the campaign map, you're doing a lot less micromanagement and a lot more focusing on your overarching strategy and your campaign plans. And after playing a couple of hours on the campaign map and the prologue, I'm pretty happy with the changes. I do miss the ability to raid outlying towns and, burn down farms to hurt your enemy, but that is still simulated in the abilities of your armies to march into enemy territory and loot supplies and cause some chaos as they're just kind of sitting there. Design-wise, on the UI and the campaign map, I'm really enjoying the new kind of stylized unit cards with the 2D card-like images, as well as the overarching diplomacy map and overview map, which is designed in kind of an illustrated style. It adds a neat visual flair to your negotiations and allows you to quickly see which regions are owned by which nations and factions and who's at war with who. The main grand campaign map has been upgraded with a ton of visual detail. I always love the detail in the Empire Total War map, and this takes it to an even higher level. There's a ton of environment effects and fog and water and lots of vegetation and trees. It looks great and really makes the campaign a joy to play. Besides the consolidation of cities, there have also been a number of changes regarding the UI itself on the campaign map. It's much more straightforward to recruit agents and give them orders and send them around. It's much easier to both build an army and maintain it, keep it well supplied, keep it up to date with troops. Now when your armies are inside of a friendly territory, they will automatically reinforce and resupply, similar to how it was in Napoleon Total War. And that's a welcome change, because it is always annoying to have to constantly check to make sure that all of your armies are topped off. It's nice to have that done automatically. While I haven't done a whole lot with naval combat yet, I am enjoying the changes where you can actually now have a naval battle that takes place in the same map as a land battle. You will actually have to land your forces from the naval fight onto the land to engage land forces. It makes them more involved in the overall campaign strategy. And I'm definitely looking forward to doing more naval combat and getting a better feel for it. Finally, seeing this as launch day, let's talk about stability. With the exception of the weird visual issues and visual setting issues that I mentioned earlier in the graphics section, the game has been very stable for a first day Total War game. I've only had one total crash to desktop, and at the time I had a hard drive that was trying to disconnect, so it could have been a Windows issue and not a game issue. Overall, the game has been very stable, and I've definitely enjoyed that because nothing ruins a good time like getting about 15 minutes into a battle and having the game crash to desktop, or trying to save your campaign game when you're 20 turns in and your save gets corrupted, and that's the end of that campaign. So great job Creative Assembly on getting the stability right on day one. Now please, just fix the frame rate issues, man. Overall, my personal launch day impressions are quite good. Despite some rough edges on the game, it's still a pretty decent launch, and the rough edges aren't really gameplay related, they're just visual and graphics related for the most part, and the game is still very playable and incredibly enjoyable. If you have a lower end PC, you might want to hold off on buying this just yet until they get some of these issues ironed out. And if you do have a decent PC and you do buy it, just expect to have some frame rate issues and some graphics issues like that. But don't worry, the game is still a ton of fun. Features-wise, the game also has a co-op campaign, and I'm talking to Joel about possibly diving in to do a Greek States Let's Play, and I'll let you guys know if that actually ends up happening. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.